City Council to order. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. This evening, our invocation will be led by Ryan Zhang, pastor at New City Church, located at 4400 Floral Avenue, Norwood, Ohio 45212. Pastor Ryan.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm pastor at New City Presbyterian Church. It's an honor to lead us in prayer tonight. Let's pray. Our God, this place is a gift. The sharing of life within this city is a gift. And so the necessary investment of time and resource toward the maintenance and flourishing of this city need not to be regarded as a burden, but as a good stewardship and glad opportunity. Give grace, therefore, that we might now perform the tasks before us, not in grudging irritation, but in gentleness and generosity of spirit, as caretakers of your blessings, and as an act of loving service to our neighbors, friends, and strangers who call this city their home. In the midst of these labors, grant us wisdom to perceive problems, imaginations to consider their solutions, and skill to remedy them. Give us humility and discernment that we may know when to seek partnership and assistance with others in our community. Guide our hands in these endeavors, O Lord. And yet even more, I pray that you would shape our hearts in the doing of them, that as we labor to govern this city, you will be ever at work in our midst, your Spirit revealing and repairing our own hearts of brokenness, ungratefulness, shame, and pride, and so making us truer citizens of the coming kingdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Here.
Mrs. Hoover.
Here.
Ms. Royce.
Here.
Mr. Kelsch.
Here.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Braden.
Here.
All members present. Moving on to amendment of the agenda. This evening I have a communication from the Law Department that I would like to add under communications. Mr. Thompson.
I move that we amend the agenda as you stated.
Motion by Mr. Thompson. May I have a second? Mr. Braden.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelsch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye. Motion passes. Moving on to the next item, October 25, 2022, regular meeting minutes of the previous meeting. May I have a motion? Mr. Thompson.
Move to receive the minutes.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to receive the minutes. Mrs. Winterbauer.
I second.
Second by Ms. Winterbauer. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelsch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye. Motion passes. Moving on to special presentations. This evening, we have two special presentations. So G1, we have Mr. Ugo Biondo, the presentation and renovation of council chambers. Sir.
Correct, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, well, as you just said, I'm here, I've been called as an architect to improve this room, this very room we're here tonight. And we prepare a presentation of what we've been developing in the last weeks, not to say months and a half probably. This is a picture of the current situation. Of course, we have here the live room, but some of the actions that we will do or that we plan to do are number one, and mostly the most important is that this ceiling that was done probably, I don't know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, it was done to install the air conditioning, but it was done in a very bad way. This room, for those who don't know, if you remove these ceiling tiles, there's a dome ceiling, just like in other rooms of the building, and it's beautiful. And There's also a soffit that we're going to expose. You're going to see that later. But then again, by removing this ceiling, the room will improve just by the experience and the height. As well, we're going to change this the wood that is from the wainscoting up with drywall is going to be painted. We're going as well to adjust all these, for example, this exit signage, the speakers, those exit signs, for example, they were installed on the frame of the door, which was a very bad idea. But of course, when they put that ceiling that low, there was no height to locate them. So we're going to relocate all that. So everything's going to be, as well, those back louvers that are in the back, they're going to be removed and replaced. As I said, in the back, those louvers are going to be removed. The flooring as well is going to be all carpet, which is going to help as well with the acoustics. And there's the idea as well of helping with that clock. We're going to put a new one. The idea is basically to improve this space in different ways, not only aesthetically. It's going to operate different and better for you that uses daily, for the visitors, and for you that are here, working. So this is a picture from 1954, and this is basically what we want to do. We're not bringing any crazy ideas. We just want to bring this room to its own, the old glory. It was like that. So the architect that did this software, how it was designed, had a clear idea that even though it seems that we're not centered here, this position is not centered because of that room, the soffit is longer on that end, just to make it feel that it's completely symmetrical, and it's all aligned with the stand, with the desk, and with the logo. Which, by the way, I don't know where is it. It was here last week or something like that.
Oh, it got moved.
The Norwood, yes.
Yeah, it's moved already.
So these just guidelines show what I'm trying to explain. Okay, and going back to this, sorry. Well, yeah, so this is, on these drawings, we're looking at, I'm not sure about the distance, but if you can see, this on this left side, we have the existing conditions against with the proposed conditions, okay? If we see the flooring, the tile, the vinyl tile that is in the back is going to be removed and replaced with carpet. For this area, we now have spots for 7 of you, but we're going to do some standard or modular desk, for I believe 6 feet, 8 feet each of them, that you can sit eight people here working. But not only that, you can move them to rearrange the room depending on the use that you have on a special occasion. This area will remain the same in terms of seating. And in the back, the idea is to remove one of the rows to make more space between that first row and the stand, because now when there's somebody there speaking, it gets congested. So we're helping out a little bit the circulation. Now the last row, it actually is kind of encroaching with the door and that circulation. So that's going to be more. There's going to be more space. That's the idea. If we see, this is a reflected ceiling plan. This is the current condition. So as you can see in this drawing, the lights, the AC diffusers, they are all over the place. There's no order. It's kind of a mess. So the idea, not to be disrespectful, but just to say that the idea is to, of course, clean that. Now that we're doing this tile ceiling is going to be at 13 feet 9 inches. So the difference is going to be huge. And the idea is to keep it as clean as possible. There's not going to be any air diffusers, just lighting. The lighting will be symmetrical and it will have a rhythm. And the air condition will be run through the existing soffit. So we will have all the ducts on the perimeter, and the diffusers will be on the side wall of the diffuser, so you won't even see them. This is a sketch from the mechanical engineer. This is the lighting design. I'm sorry. This is the lighting design with only 3 return diffusers in the back. Well, that's clear the difference of what we have now and what we plan to do. But the big difference is seen in this section. So this is a longitudinal section This is the current condition. You can see where the, well, I don't know if you can see it from there, but you can see the location of the existing soffits as you saw in the initial picture from 1954, and this ceiling, the height, where is it? So it was very bad done. So what we're doing is very easy. Just by removing it, it will look like we did something great, but just the difference, it's going to be huge. So this the existing soffit that we're showing has that same wainscoting in wood all over the perimeter, which to build it today is going to cost a fortune. We have it there. It's just that we don't see it. So of course there's going to be some repair to do, but the idea is just to sand it and to varnish again to match the existing conditions. But it's there, okay? We're adding just a little, just above this area where we have this platform. It's like a tray of drywall, and it's going to be different than this ceiling, just to have a different texture. So we're going to have here some recessed lighting just to give it more importance and hierarchy to this area. As you can see here, this is the tray that we're proposing. And you can see here the diffusers that were going to be along the soffit and not in the ceiling. Important as well to mention, you can see the difference in the seating. There's way more room now that we eliminate a row. And as well in the improvement that we're going to do to the audio and to the video, the TVs are not going to longer be on this stand. We're proposing to have 3 TVs now. One is going to be here, but attached to the wall with a swivel arm. It's my understanding that this TV is not used 100% of the time, so it doesn't make sense to have it all the time in this position. So when it's not in use, it's going to be sleeping attached to the wall, and when it's in use, you're just going to swivel and make it use. The other one is going to be pretty close to where is that speaker, and the other one on that wall, so you guys can easily see what's happening while we're exposing, correct? You can see those two TVs I'm mentioning on that wall. And this is the other section in the transversal direction. Again, you can see the existing condition where we have the height right now and what is going to happen after. Again, you can see there how that soffit on that end is larger, just to make it symmetrical with this axis. Then we have all the elevations. These elevations show existing conditions, again with proposed condition. The existing conditions, you can see how the ceiling even is eating part of the window. It's eating part of the natural light. So that is going to, again, be up, and it's going to be usable for us. We're going to have more light. Again, this elevation existing against proposed. You can see the TVs. You can see the silhouette that the ceiling is going to have. This is the back elevation and front elevation as well. So in terms of, that's the changes architecturally speaking. Then if we talk about what's the materiality of the textures of how it's going to look, so pretty much now we have a very plain palette. We have the wood that we can see in the paneling. We have this wainscoting that is rich, let's call it that way. We have the acoustic ceiling, and we have the carpet. This superior part of the palette, it's okay. It's what we can use for an institutional building like this one. But there's a possibility as well to use color if we want. That we can do some accents to some walls if we want. At some point we said, well, maybe we can just show what we can do with that, or which areas we can intervene with color. But again, this, for example, is what happens if we use the green that we have in the logo of the city of Norwood, trying to get color from the branding that already exists and bring it to the room. Again, this is just for reference to trigger the conversation. Let's put it that way. But I'm fine to keep it up as it is with the regular palette. To finish, before we go through questions, this is the regular palette. We don't change it, just with keeping the white, the wood, and the materials. This is how the room is supposed to look when when we do these renovations. This is the soffit that I'm mentioning. Is right there. It's just hidden behind the acoustical ceiling. And this is the tray that we're going to put here on this area, above this area, with recessed architectural lighting. So it's going to be look and feel different for this area. This is the location of the TVs. And that's that's a section. That's pretty much what we have here. I don't know if I went too fast, but I'm open for questions and doubts or something.
Any questions? Mr. Braden?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. So thanks for the presentation. That really looks beautiful. Did you say that's acoustic tile ceiling? Your new ceiling putting, we're going to go back with acoustic?
That is correct.
Perfect, with some lighting, okay. Perfect.
If acoustics are a concern, we kept that in consideration. So this ceiling is going to be above, considerably about 5 feet above. So we'll have more volume in the room. So there's more space for acoustics, and the acoustics will remain on that roof that is designed for that, and as well in the carpet. We'll have more surface of rock, of carpet floor. So the carpet as well helps, keeping the sound and not reflecting.
Appreciate that.
Of course.
Anyone else?
I can add something that I just remember. So the soffit that I just mentioned that goes all around the room will have indirect lighting. So the room will have, you can turn off the lights, and if you turn out only the indirect lighting, you will see like a halo that it's illuminating all the room. And then you have the lights that's going to be in the ceiling that illuminates directly the surface area. And it will be divided in two zones. So from that low wall from here, it's going to be one zone, and there's going to be zone 2. So if you're using this area, but there's no visitors, there's no need to have all the room lit up, if that makes sense. Also, the stand, it's not going to stay in that position. The idea is to attach the stand to the wall. So that will free up a lot of space in that area, and it's going to be better to have that standalone piece of furniture.
Great. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We have an additional presentation this evening. Michelle Balls, with Solid Waste Manager, Hamilton County Solid Waste Plan Updates.
Yes, should I grab that microphone?
If you would, you can come up here if you like.
Oh, okay. Sure. My presentation was up before.
So, number 1, and this on this piece. Right there.
Yep, they moved it.
Really good too. Sorry, see if I can get there.
I'll come back for my stuff.
This enables photosynthesis.
Not it.
Essential.
That might be more interesting. There we go. Thank you. So should I use that to
You're fine.
forward the
Either way.
slides?
Where do you can sit right here. And you can
Oh,
go
that's
through your
okay.
slides.
Okay, great. So, hello everyone. My name is Michelle Baltz. I am with Hamilton County Resource. We were formerly called the Hamilton County Recycling and Solid Waste District. And I am here today to talk about our solid waste plan update. We should only take less than 10 minutes of your time. I timed myself at 6 minutes, so we should be good. I do have to say before I start, though, that this is a bit of a homecoming for me because I grew up in Norwood, spent the first 14 years of my life here, went to Allison Elementary and Gressley and Norwood Middle and High School, so I'm happy to be back. I snatched up the Norwood presentation when we were dipping them out, so thanks for having me. So the Hamilton County Resource, we are a department of the Department of Environmental Services, and we are under the Board of County Commissioners. We are non-regulatory, so we cannot force anyone to recycle or compost, but our mission is to reduce how much waste goes to the landfill. So every county in Ohio has to have a solid waste district. So, I'm not sure where to point this.
Somebody
I
help
don't know,
her.
is the computer in there?
Somebody help her.
Yeah.
I can just do it without you can just have this as the background. I'll just talk. Before I dig too much into our solid waste plan update, I do want to mention a few of the programs that we have that you may have heard of coming from the solid waste district. We have grant programs. Our largest is our residential recycling incentive grant. And Norwood applies for that every year. You basically report to us how many tons you've landfilled and recycled and composted. We kind of divvy up the money amongst the 48 communities in Hamilton County. And, thank you. And last year, Norwood received a little over $15,000 through that program. And you've used that in the past to buy like the Norwood Recycles benches. You've seen those, outdoor recycling bins, that kind of thing. Ooh, now I'm standing right in front of it. Okay. Okay, so a few other things that we do. We do outreach campaigns directly to residents. So things about how to recycle, what you can recycle. We send out mailers. We have more recently campaigns about reducing wasted food and trying to impact that. We do pay for a full-time sheriff deputy to investigate illegal dumping in Hamilton County. And we also have drop-off programs. So we just recently had our House to Hazardous Waste program. We've actually held that in Norwood before over at the Centos parking lot off Montgomery Road. And then we have yard trimmings drop-off sites as well in the county. So what is the solid waste plan? According to Ohio Revised Code, solid waste districts have to write a 15-year solid waste plan that says where our trash is going to go, do we have enough capacity, how are we going to meet state-mandated diversion goals, and then what programs are we going to do. And we have to update this every 5 years, and it takes about 2.5 years to update. So we do this a lot. Right now, this is kind of our timeline. Right now, we got the comments back from Ohio EPA. They reviewed our draft plan. We are adding those comments and making final changes over the next few months. We expect to go out for ratification in probably March or May of next year. So that is where you come in. Ohio Revised Code says that we have 90 days to get all 48 communities in Hamilton County to vote for the solid waste plan. We have to get at least 60% population represented by the communities that vote. Last time we got 100%, so thank you for voting for it last time. So that will happen early next year, and we'll definitely notify you that that's happening. I'm just here today to kind of give you a heads up that this is coming. So a few things that we've changed. The residential recycling incentive, we're keeping that. We're maintaining the funding at $800,000. This is a program that helps offset the costs of curbside recycling, drop-off recycling, yard trimmings, collection, that kind of thing. We are making some changes, though. So we are going to allow communities to now claim commercial tonnage. So it's not just residential tonnage, and this is pretty good for Norwood because you have quite a few businesses. You can also claim the recycling that businesses are doing. You can also claim the yard trimmings that you're collecting from street trees or parks. All of that you can count towards your diversion rate. So I imagine that's going to increase your diversion rate. We don't know how we're going to do that yet. It's something that we put in there, so we're going to figure it out before the plan starts in 2024. The other thing we're doing is we are creating a minimum threshold of funding. So I mentioned earlier that Norwood gets $15,000. That's a good chunk of change that you can do something with. There's some communities that are so small that there's one community that got $39 last year. So they can't really do much for $39. So we're recognizing that. We're going to create a minimum threshold of amount that they will get so that they can actually make impact with the funds. The other thing that we're doing in the plan is we are increasing the budget and staff time towards commercial for businesses assistance. So we will go out and help businesses and any other organizations, schools, churches, nonprofit organizations. We help them set up recycling programs, and we actually provide the interior collection containers. We don't own or operate any facilities, but we'll help them get someone who can come out and get their recycling. So we do that now, but we are increasing that budget so we can impact even more businesses, even more industry, and have a stronger influence because The business sector, when you look at all commercial and industrial, it makes up about 86% of the waste generated. So if we're going to have an impact and really try to reduce waste, we have to go after that sector and help them out. The other thing that is new in this plan is that we hired a local consultant to look at our programs from a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. We want to make sure that we're reaching all residents and businesses and people who work and live in Hamilton County. So we had them look at our programs through that lens, and they really gave us some good advice on measuring our impact and engagement. So that is part of our solid waste plan. Unrelated to the DEI goals, one thing that we are looking into now, we get fees from the landfill. That's how we are funded. We are looking at what would happen if we increase the out-of-district fees. So not what communities like Norwood pay, but Butler County and Warren County, waste coming into Hamilton County. What would happen if we increased the fees to them? Would it decrease how much waste is coming into Hamilton County? So we are currently researching that right now. That would not impact your fees, but it is something that we're looking into. I told you it would be fast. Here's our obligatory social media. Follow us. And that is my contact information. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Mrs. Hoover?
I have a couple. Thank you so much for coming. Actually, last council meeting, I was talking about how City Hall needs to do a better job of recycling.
Happy to help.
Actually, I know someone who I think can help us, who might have gone through your program. So,
Okay. Excellent.
so thank you. You mentioned compost. How do you know how much we compost?
So I believe right now Norwood has a contract with Rumpke to collect yard trimmings separately, and they are composted separately. And Rumpke reports those yard trimmings numbers along with the recycling. So they weigh that truck, and they may not go just to Norwood. They may hit some other communities, and then they'll split it up and know, like, well, half the truck was Norwood's, and they'll divvy up the tonnage that way. So I believe though that you do have that separate yard trimmings collection.
Do you know if that's the bags as well as the leaf collection when they suck it up with a big vacuum?
I think so.
Okay.
I think anything that would be composted separately that's not going to the landfill counts towards your diversion rate.
Awesome. Next question I had. Oh, you mentioned how much we have been, $15,000. Is there a good goal that Norwood should be aiming for?
That's a great question. So I would be happy to go and look at what your current diversion rate is, and I should have looked that up before I came. How the residential recycling incentive program is structured is it's by 5 percentage point increments. And every time you move up into the next 5% bracket, you get more dollars per ton through the RRI. So we have really easy goals, not easy, but like clear goals. Like if you are currently at, I would guess you're somewhere around 9%. So if you're around 9% diversion rate now, you hit 10, you get $4 more per ton that you're collecting. And then if you hit 15, you get $8 more per ton. So it's set up that way to encourage, it's called an incentive program. We're trying to incentivize communities. So I'd be happy to look into what your diversion rate is and recommend a percentage goal for you. And I will say Silverton, which is a similar demographics to Norwood, they set a 20% goal for themselves. They said 20% by 2020, and they got it. Honestly, I didn't think that they would get it, but they did. I was floored. So I do think it's achievable, but I would just have to look up what your diversion rate is.
We should find out their playbook on what they did
Yes.
to that.
Yeah.
One of them was, another question I had was about encouraging businesses to recycle. And if you had suggestions, if you have brochures, like how do we go about?
So we have basically free consulting out of our office. We have some really knowledgeable staff who will go out and help businesses figure it out, because you really have to do it on a case-by-case basis. You have to look at, what kind of waste do we have. If it's a really complicated waste stream, we'll even do a waste sort and figure out, what do you have that you're throwing away? What could we divert? Half your dumpster is cardboard, which is highly valuable, and it's going to be cheaper to recycle it than it is to landfill it. So we could, cut your your dumpster service in half, and you can make up the cost by paying for recycling. So we have people that will do that. So not only the advice, which I think is the most valuable, but then we also will provide the little blue Rubbermaid Slim Jims is what they're called, or desk side containers if it's an office. We provide those interior containers at no cost. So we really are trying to help and encourage that any organization, businesses, schools will go out and we can do programs in schools. We've got lots of assistance.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Anyone else? Thank you very
Great,
much.
thanks so much for having me.
Next on our agenda is item I, request to address council. I have one request this evening. Bishop Sonny James.
Good evening. Good evening, Bishop Sonny James. On my sheet for the address, I put question mark. As most of you know, our family has experienced a horrific fire. But we are pressing our way. I'm so honored to be able to stand before citizens of our community as we embark upon facing potentially a historic night that will be well remembered for maybe decades to come. And so this is a very special night. I want to, I'm really impressed with, whoever had anything to do with this new design. Man, I'm just, wow, that's awesome, And that's what I love to see is every opportunity that we as a people together can just see ways to better improve us. And that's certainly, I can't wait to see the ceilings go up. That's going to be really nice. I'm also pleased to hear Ms. Balls talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Many of you know that it's very, very dear to me, and it's very important that all people are considered. Now, of course, it doesn't really surprise me. One of my dearest peers, her and her father and family, our Hamilton County Commissioner, I'm sure Ms. Reese had something to do with that DEA plan. And my ideal situation for Norwood is that we also piggyback something similar, and I'm going to tell you all why. A few weeks ago, I received a public notice via my email about a diversity board from Ms. Hoover. And let me, first of all, before I say this, I consider us all peers. I really do. I don't just dislike too many people. But when I showed up for that diversity board, I was advised that I was not allowed to come in. Now, all of you here know, and the listeners and viewers know, that when it comes to diversity, I'm really passionate about that. One of the problems that I have, though, is not just showing up and being told, which we'll look into that from a more legal standpoint, but it's one thing to say you can't come in, but it's another when you have African American people who are well invested in this community, not even to have known about such a meeting. And then here we are, of recent, I get a message from who I do adore. She's attempting to do good work in our community. But I get a message saying, hey, we're having a committee meeting and I haven't been able to reach so-and-so. Knowing that I know how to reach out to so-and-so, My concern is when we talk about working together, guys, it is important that we not just go through the channels that our mayor has set in place. And I've been saying this for years, and this is just an example. When we know that we're doing good work, people of color would like to be a part of that good work. However, not just the small group of minorities that are already identified and supported by our mayor. In order to do DEI, you have to open up the channels of opportunity. And what I stand for is opportunity for everybody. So we have to dig deeper and find a way. Listen, if we can find a way to lift this ceiling, we can find a way to make sure that people who need to be at the table are at the table. And to all of our viewers, I don't know how in the world you talk about diversity, yet the 4 African American business owners that I personally have spoken to knew nothing about it. Furthermore, my son, Boom Boom, was very instrumental in helping Miss Hoover do the Hispanic Day, which, by the way, was phenomenal. But then he knows nothing about the Diversity Board. We've got to open up inclusion for everybody, and that means doing it different. Call me. You know how to reach me when you need me. So call me when you have something that applies to me or the people that I serve. God bless you all, and I pray tomorrow morning we'll all be celebrating with good representation nationwide.
Thank you, Bishop James.
God
That
bless.
concludes our request to address council. We'll move on to item K1, third reading of ordinance and resolutions. K1, ordinance amending Part 11, planning and zoning relating to various chapters to promote clarity and consistency in policy, interpretation, application, processing, ease of use, readability, dealing with architectural projections, fences, and other related administrative type changes. Mr. Thompson.
We move we have the third reading of the ordinance.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to have the third reading. May I have a second? Ms. French.
I second.
Mrs. Franzen, second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelsch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, the motion passes.
Ordinance amending Part 11, Planning and Zoning Code, relating to various chapters to promote clarity and consistency in policy interpretation, application processing, ease of use, readability, dealing with architectural projections, fences, and other related administrative type changes as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Gears. May I have a motion to pass the ordinance? Mrs. Franzen.
I move we pass the ordinance.
Motion by Mrs. Franzen to pass the ordinance. Mrs. Winterbauer.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Winterbauer. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelsch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, the ordinance passes. Moving on to item K2, ordinance levying a $5 motor vehicle license tax as authorized by section 4504.173 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency. Mrs. Winterbauer.
Motion to have the third reading.
Motion by Mrs. Winterbauer to have the third reading. Mrs. Royce.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Royce. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelsch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Nope.
We have all 7 members voting, 6 ayes, 1 no. Motion passes. May we have the third reading?
Ordinance levying a $5 motor vehicle license tax as authorized by section 4504.173 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Gears. May I have a motion to pass the ordinance? Mr. Thompson.
Motion to pass?
Motion by Mr. Thompson to pass the ordinance. Mrs. Franzen.
I second.
Second by Mrs. Franzen. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
No.
All 7 members voting. We have 6 ayes, 1 no. The ordinance passes. Moving on to item L1, ordinance authorizing hearing officers to consider the appeals of administrative decisions, including any appeals of 45-2022, findings about chronic nuisance properties, and providing rules regarding those officers. Mrs. Winterbauer.
Motion to have the second reading?
Motion by Mrs. Winterbauer to have the second reading. Mr. Kelch.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, the motion passes.
Ordinance authorizing hearing officers to consider the appeals of administrative decisions, including any appeals of 45-2022, findings about chronic nuisance properties, and providing rules regarding those hearing officers.
Thank you, Mr. Gears. Moving on to item M1, introductory reading of ordinances and resolutions. Resolution authorizing the city auditor to approve a then and now certificate for the dispatch fund 1001-0940-57200 to pay an invoice in the amount of $8,921 for the Norwood dispatch services provided by Hamilton County Department of Communications and declaring an emergency. Mrs. Franzen.
I move that we suspend the rules and have all 3 readings.
Motion by Mrs. Franzen to suspend the rules and have all 3 readings. May I have a second? Ms. Royce.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Royce. Any discussion? Mrs. Hoover.
I'm curious why this is a then and now. If someone could explain that.
Mr. Powers.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes. So these are invoices that are coming in kind of regularly. Unfortunately, we've had some issues about who they're going to regularly. With some turnover through the county, they've been sometimes coming to Chief McCabe, sometimes they've been coming to me, sometimes they've been coming to Sharon Stein. And so they're not always getting to the place they need to get at the right time. On top of that, our email system had an issue where it was kicking them back. So for a couple of months, we didn't get them, and then we got them totally out of order. So we had some that were able to be paid on the existing purchase order. This one was the one that kind of came over the existing purchase order amount. So there actually is a purchase order in place for this. It wasn't large enough to cover everything. We sat down, did a purchase order to cover the rest of the year, but unfortunately, we did that purchase order just after this invoice was created, but before we got it. So everything kind of went,
Crazy.
yes.
All right.
And so the long and short of it is, purchase orders are in place for it, but once we got the bills out of order, we weren't able to get everything paid on the purchase order. So that's why this one became a then and now.
So this amount is within normal expectations.
Yeah, this is the right amount. They're this amount every month. So basically what happened was we got 3 of them all at once, and we had 2 months worth we could pay on the purchase order. So we paid the 2 that we could. We have the purchase orders in place to cover out the rest of the year.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Any other questions? Mrs. Winterbauer.
Was it discussed with Hamilton County who to send it to? Is that clear now, or?
It was discussed. We haven't gotten another one for me to say that it's totally been cleared up, but we did discuss it, yes.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Powers.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, the motion passes.
Resolution authorizing the city auditor to approve a then and now certificate for the dispatch fund 1001-0940-57200 to pay an invoice in the amount of $8,921 for Norwood dispatch services provided by Hamilton County Department of Communications and declaring an emergency. Resolution authorizing the city auditor to approve a then and now certificate for the Dispatch Fund 1001-0940-57200 to pay an invoice in the amount of $8,921 for Norwood Dispatch Services provided by Hamilton County Department of Communications and declaring an emergency. Resolution authorizing the city auditor to approve a then and now certificate for the Dispatch Fund 1001-0940-57200 to pay an invoice in the amount of $8,921 for Norwood Dispatch Services provided by Hamilton County Department of Communications and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Gears. May I have a motion to pass the resolution? Mrs. Winterbauer.
Motion to pass the resolution?
May I have a second? Mrs. Hoover.
Second?
Second by Mrs. Hoover. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, the resolution passes. Moving on to item N, administrative reports. Mayor Snyder.
Thank you, sir. I would like to recognize that the Boy Scouts are in the audience, or the Scouts are in the audience from Troop 9, Pack 9. We appreciate seeing you. It's great when the Scouts are here because when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, they are loud and proud. They know the Pledge of Allegiance and they say it loud and proud. I really appreciate that. And I recognize a few of them from Ian Davis's Eagle Scout Court of Honor. It's great to see the Scouts here. Working on the community, citizenship and the community merit badge, maybe?
That one is, and the rest of them are working on building a better world.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming. Let's see, Darren Hackworth, our project manager, really should have came up and given an introduction for Hugo Bendo, because Hugo's worked on some other projects in the city of Norwood. He is an Italian architect who really, when I sat down with him the first time we sat down, he looked at it, the project he looked at, and you could see he was inspired right away. Not just inspired to tear things apart and build something brand new. He looked at the history of this building and he looked at some of the pictures and he said, you know, the former glory. And when they, you know, you pop your head up above here and you see all that soffit work that's already in place. So there were actually three ceilings in here. He talked about the balloon structure. That's way up there. I mean, it's way up there. We're not touching that. And then there's a sub ceiling that was put in, and then there's this drop ceiling. This drop ceiling was probably put in during a fuel crisis. They were doing it to bring the heat and try to pull things down. And I think his words were, it's an atrocity. For what is above this and what we are bringing back, what he's going to bring back, this room is going to be back to its really the beauty of the 50s, which is what this, even now this room's not horrible looking to me, but it's going to be so much nicer. And he came up with some really neat plans, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted him in here to give you that presentation. Because I think this is the last, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is our last council meeting in here.
That is correct.
Then we will move into our temporary council chambers, temporary mayor's court chambers, which will be in the auditorium area. That's where we'll be for a couple of months. There's some really interesting stuff going on around City Hall. You'll hear more about it as things progress, but there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Also, Mr. Braden, you talked about the sound, the acoustics. They're thinking about the acoustics. Mr. Hackworth has already worked with the sound company that will put the speaker systems in. We won't have these big hideous, I think that was another one of us, the hideous speakers and lights and different things. We'll have a much better sound system. When the air conditioning does kick on during a meeting, we will still be able to hear each other, which will be awful nice. So there's a lot of reasons to do this. City Hall's getting new windows right now. That's been a ongoing process of getting the new windows in place. Some of the offices are still being updated. Police headquarters, they are upgrading some of the police facilities downstairs to accommodate the police officers in a much better way. The rec center is getting the ADA improvements put in place. The one thing that jumped out at me on this $8,921 then and now, you know, we're getting them every month. Our dispatch fees are a little over $100 and I think probably if you look at the numbers, it's going to be about 140,000, 130,000. But if people from the Finance Committee recognize what we were paying in dispatch fees prior to Hamilton County taking over, it wasn't 8,921, it was 892,000 that we were paying for our dispatch back then. So this, the going to Hamilton County dispatch has been a huge move in the right direction financially. I know there are other people that have differences of opinions, but financially it was the right move for us, and they've done good work for us. And it's an important number to keep in mind when we're talking about those payments that we make to Hamilton County. Other than that, I was out of town this weekend. I'm hoping that somebody will give a report on what happened at the 5K. My son ran it. He said he set a personal best. There's plenty of other fun stuff going on. I think December 3rd is the Christmas Town stuff. There's all sorts of stuff that I'm sure, I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but a lot of good projects going on. Public Works is out with the trucks picking up leaves. They should be following, the goal is to follow the trash day. So if they pick up your garbage on a Wednesday, you want to get your leaves out on that Tuesday, because hopefully Wednesday, Thursday, they're picking up your piles of leaves. And then keep in mind, they're picking them up with a truck. So if you put a big pile of leaves out there and somebody parks on top of your pile of leaves and it's sitting there for 3 days, it's probably gonna take a week to get them cleaned up. So, but they are out doing bulk pickup, and it really does make it handy when you've got those big trees and you can just take them out there. So, again, Public Works doing a great job for us. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions or comments for Mayor Schneider?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to recognize our treasurer, city treasurer, Mr. James Bonzel. Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, I do not have a report today. I just came to, be here in case I was needed.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Bonzel? Thank you, sir. Moving on to item O, unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business this evening? Mrs. Hoover.
You know I always have something. Let's see. Xavier University. Now I can't remember if it was a city council meeting or a housing meeting. It's all a bit of a blur. Some neighbors came pretty upset about some of the banners that Xavier students had along Clinny. Pretty rude comments, encouraging drinking sorts of behavior. I did a deep dive on signage in Norwood, and anyone wants to buy me a drink, I'm more than happy to tell you everything you want to know about what's legal about signage in Norwood. I think I know more than anyone. I'm willing to take the challenge. But those banners are not permitted. Fabric banners are considered a temporary signage, and so those require a permit. So I did reach out to Xavier. They're having their big alumni weekend this weekend, and they had intended to do, the Student Alumni Association had intended to do a battle of the banners, which would have been a friendly banner, not the rude stuff, but unfortunately some of their peers ruined it, so we've put a bit of a wet blanket on it. The Student Alumni Association has canceled that event. And I will be reaching out to the students to let them know that that is not a permitted activity. So I know I'm getting some looks from my good friend. So if there are banners that are not allowed, I encourage folks to reach out to the building department. You can see Click Fix It. You can reach out to a council member. It's all about having a nice, clean community for everybody. If you'd like to do the happy birthday signs in the yard, like I had when I turned 50, those are allowed. So you can do that. I think that's the only thing I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoover. Anyone else with unfinished business? Then we'll move on to new business. Any new business this evening? Mrs. Franson.
Yeah, just a couple updates. So with the park survey, I've gotten 165 unique responses from folks, so thank you all. If you haven't done the park survey, definitely do that. I'm going to close it up and start tabulating the data and hopefully making a nice little presentation for us all. So I'm going to discuss with Mr. Miracle and some of the other folks on the Parks Committee what the best way to present that data to the city is. And I'll be talking to Darren and Michael Gabbard and other folks with Public Works and Parks and Rec to see kind of what the next steps are with what we're going to use that data for. So we got some good information on what parks people feel need the most updates, what they want to see in the parks, and our job will be to kind of say, okay, what's reasonable, price it out, and try to see how we can get funding for it in the coming years. So I'm excited for that. For the 5K, really beautiful day. For once, it was actually not freezing. As someone who has to get up at 6 in the morning, I really appreciated that because I have to get the mile markers out in our truck. We set a new record of attendees. We had 579 people sign up. Our previous high was like 480, so that was a nice little jump there. I think the nice weather helped that. Had the kids' fun run, which was adorable. And we had some really fast runners, and I led the 5K on my bike and had a really good time at the after party. The giant UDF cow was there. There was refreshments, food. Police, fire was there. Ron Murphy was manning the grill, and UDF was standing up for ice cream. So I think it was a blast, and I'm really looking forward to next year. If you haven't been a part of it yet, or if you're not a walker or runner, I just want to emphasize, you can come to the after party. It's okay. You can just come. We'll give you the free food. We won't even check if you have a runner thing. It's really up to you, but I've been really excited. I don't know how much money we raised because we haven't gotten the check from the race. Race Penguin is the place that we do all of the registrations. They cut a check about 2 weeks after the event. So hopefully next council meeting I'll have an update of how much money we actually raised. I do know we got $25,000 in sponsorships this year, which is another record. So all the money that we raise minus cost for the race will be going back to the Parks Department. Yeah. And I was going to recognize the Scout Pack, but the mayor already did that. So thank you to Jacob Dietz for reaching out and checking about the best time to. Thanks you all for coming and sitting through. I know it's maybe not the most exciting thing, but it is important.
It's better than the September meeting.
Good.
Any other new business this evening? Mrs. Hoover?
Something I was thinking we should put in the committee of the whole. There's been some questions about costs for copies for council. It seems like when we're doing some bigger things, not just like if I'm mailing 2 letters, where does that money come from? Do we have a fund for it?
Okay.
That's it.
That's it? Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
And what I'd like to do is, prior to the next meeting, which will be over there, we'll have a committee of the whole at 6:30 prior to our next meeting, because I believe now we have 3 items in there. So if everybody's good with that, we'll go ahead and get that out. Mrs. Francis?
I just had a question. Is that on the 22nd?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next meeting is 22nd.
I'm sorry, 6:30?
6:30, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Any other new business? If not, we'll move on to communications.
Dear Mr. President and council members, enclosed, please find the report for Norwood Mayor's Court for the month of October 2022. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Victor Schneider, Mayor, City of Norwood.
Mr. Braden.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Motion to receive and file the letter.
Motion by Mr. Braden to receive and file the letter. May I have a second? Mrs. Winterbauer.
Second?
Second by Mrs. Winterbauer. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelsch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye. Motion passes. Move on to the next item.
Dear members of council, we write to ask that the council consider holding an executive session at its regularly scheduled meeting this Tuesday, November 8th, 2022, as permitted by Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22 G3, so that we may confer with the council concerning a matter involving the City of Norwood that is the subject of pending court action. If you have any questions or comments about this request, please feel free to contact the Law Department. Thank you. Sincerely, Keith Moore, Law Director, Tim Gary, Assistant Law Director.
Thank you, Mr. Gears. Mr. Thompson.
I move that we receive and file the letter and also go into executive session for the purpose of discussing impending litigation against the city of Norwood.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. May I have a second? Mrs. Winterbauer.
Any second?
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes, and we are in executive session. And we are out of executive session. Moving on to item S, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to adjourn, please.
Motion by Mr. Braden. Ms. Royce?
Second?
Second by Ms. Royce. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson? Yep. Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion passes. We're adjourned.